violate human rights, even unto death, are common in extreme religionists. They cloak their crimes claiming the justification of God. Such crimes are blood atonement, honor killings, and just plain domestic violence. Our guest is author, detective, investigator John Llewellyn. John is the author of several books. His books are all based on crimes he has investigated. He is a professional particularly, but not limited to, sex crimes and polygamist crimes. Please welcome John Llewellyn.
Right.
John, explain to the people what blood atonement is.
Well, if you look at it from the Mormon fundamentalist point of view, what you're doing is it was originally directed at apostates. And they committed a sin so great that the only way they could be saved was to have their blood shed. And then the smoke from the blood in the earth would go up to heaven and save them. And you know, Reuland Jeffs, Warren's father, wrote upon it and said that the blood atonement was a correct principle, and they preached it. And in fact, I know for a fact in a meeting that I attended, a 70s quorum, while with AUB, there wasn't a lot of generalizing, but it was admitted then by the head of the 70s quorum that blood atonement was a valid and a correct principle. It's interesting, you know, Martin Luther in the 16th century, when he tacked his 95 Theses to the door of the church, the penalty at that time for heresy was death. And of course, as you pointed out, in Islam, the penalty for apostasy is death. And again, the parallels are just so similar that you know you just can't avoid them. It's not a coincidence. It's what leads to when people get into this. They're the only ones that have authority, and you either do what I do or you're dead philosophy.
But when you look at the behavior of human beings everywhere, I mean, look at the modern statistics. 1 in 4 women in the United States is living with abusive violence or domestic violence. 1 in 3 young girls are even in a worse circumstance, and that's only the statistics we know about, not the ones that are hidden and nobody told us. So narcissistic behavior is narcissistic behavior regardless of whether it is backed by religion or not. Religion becomes therefore a cloak to cover an excuse for power.
That's right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And there's so many examples of it, especially in Mormon fundamentalism.
Every decade or less, there was a headline in the Salt Lake City Tribune that somebody killed somebody in a blood atonement. And it was always attributed to somebody of a weird little group we never heard of. And people don't realize that all these little groups have their bank account in their own church name.
Fundamentalism.
John, in all of these books that you have written them to help people understand and educate them about a subculture that is very prevalent in the United States, Canada, and Mexico. And this subculture is intertwined, intermingled, even though each branch has separate names. Can you explain that to people?
The different organized groups?
Yes.
Well, it all began back in the 1920s with a man named Lorne Woolley and Joseph Musser. There used to be just one group. And then some of the people in this group, which probably only numbered 50 or 60 at the time, some of them went down and established a community in what was called Short Creek, which is now Colorado City, Colorado City. And they were doing things on their own that wasn't approved by Joseph Musser, who was supposed to be the leader at that time. And this caused a split. And so Rulon Allred at the time was part of the council, the priesthood council, and he was able to convince Joseph Musser to organize a new group, which they named Apostolic United Brethren.
Wasn't that earlier known when Uncle Rulon started that? Wasn't that earlier just called the Allred Group, or did they have that name to start with?
No, they called it Apostolic United Brethren, and then they filed corporate papers. I have copies of them filed away, and it was way back in the 40s, and it's called the Corporation of the Presiding Elder of Apostolic United Brethren. It's a sole corporation, and they use the same format as the LDS Church. And the official corporate name of the LDS Church is the Corporation of the President of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And see, in the FLDS, they copied it also. The fundamentalists are great copiers, and they named theirs the Corporation of the President of the Fundamentalist Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Wow.
So anyway, those two groups broke away, and then there was a fellow named Kingston, I can't remember his first name, who decided that they weren't doing the right thing, and so he organized his own group. So there became three groups, and you know the law of sociology. Once a group gets so large, it's going to break up and bifurcate, or go into split up, and of course that's been the case. The Centennial Park people broke away from the FLDS over the one-man rule. There was another little group that started up out of AUB called the Righteous Branch, which branched off from AUB.
Boy, there's a lot of branches, huh?
Oh yeah, it just branches out like a tree, and this is the normal phenomenon of a sociological. It's a sociological phenomenon. In other words, that once a group gets so big, look at Islam. It started out with Muhammad in one group, and then you had the Shiites, and then the Sunnis, and then you have all of these different terrorist groups, the Brotherhood, the CARE. There's just dozens of them, but they all have one thing in common, and that's the Muslims have have the Quran, and the polygamists have the 132nd section of the Doctrine and Covenants, and then they all call upon the Journal of Discourses to justify and support polygamy and the law of consecration and the other archaic doctrine.
Well, isn't it interesting? Don't you find that all of these quote unquote prophets have their own writings? I know that my grandfather wrote a book, and my uncles have written, and Warren Jeffs has written, and each one of these guys have their own interpretation and spin on what God said to enforce upon the people.
Well, that's true, and you're not going to be able to organize your own group unless you find fault with the established group. You got to find fault. I mean, it's just like our political system right now. All of the GOP candidates are jockeying for position, slinging mud at one of each other, trying to come out on top. You know, if Obama was all that great and benevolent and good, there wouldn't be any need for a replacement, and you've got to find fault. So finding fault, and what it boils down to is hatred. I recently did an essay on my blog called "Is the World Driven by Hate?" And hate is very important within the Mormon fundamentalists. They hate the church because they discontinued plural marriage. They hate the government because they attack the church. They hate apostates. They hate homosexuals. They hate the blacks. Hate unites. Hate unites more than than love does, even though they claim that they're a loving people. But it's like one of my favorite authors, Eric Hoffer, the stevedore philosopher, said. He says, you can't build a group on love without a devil. Every group has got to have a devil.
You have to have the adversary to keep him in the corral.
That's right.
Well, the interesting thing is about the hate. That they hate the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints because they get rid of polygamy, but they blame the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints for their behavior.
Right.
They hate the government,
right.
But they take all government funds they can possibly get, and the government supports them.
Oh, of course, yeah.
And they hate, the most hate is directed toward their benefactors.
Yeah. Well, you know that a lot of these groups tape record their meetings, you know, for posterity. They feel that they're so important, you know, they're the only people that God recognizes. And Jim Harmston, I had a tape once where he told his people, he says, you know, the government owes us. And he instructed his people to take advantage of every government program that there was. He says, they owe us for what they did to Joseph Smith. And of course, Jim Harmston thinks that he's Joseph Smith, that in an earlier probation, yeah, he was Joseph Smith. He was Isaiah, and after he saw the movie Braveheart, he remembered that he was William Wallace also.
Yeah, well, he's got a good con game going. Look how much money he took.
Yeah, he took a lot of money. The group isn't growing now. We've exposed it to the point where he's getting very, very few converts. And it's kind of like the FLDS. Most of his growth comes from within rather than outside.
Well, he pulled a lot of con games and really cheated people out of their property and money, didn't he?
Well, he did, yeah. I was the investigator in a lawsuit for Cindy Stewart and Keziah May Hancock, where he conned them out of $250,000. We won that lawsuit also. We went to arbitration, but we won.
Isn't it interesting how in the narcissistic behavior, when it gets extreme enough, that their sexuality and multiple partners gives them power and godhood, and the women, it gives them condemnation and destruction, and in some case sexual mutilation. And these narcissists always enforce a lifestyle on somebody else that they themselves would never tolerate. Whether it comes to money, sex, power, they're at the top, literally leaving their footprints on the people they walk upon.
And they have to, these narcissists have to continually test their people to make sure that they're following, to reinforce their narcissism. Like Warren Jeffs has been doing with the FLDS, telling that they can't have toys and destroy all of their bikes. And then they can't have sex for a certain period. These are constantly tests to feed his narcissism. And if the people are robotic, which so many of them are, they go ahead and obey because they think their salvation is dependent upon them.
Well, he's got a couple of extremes going on right now. They say approximately 1/10 of his people are not willing to wait till he gets out of prison till they have sex again, and they're leaving.
I will venture a guess that the Y chromosome is more powerful than him.
and then the others are going in to be rebaptized.
Yeah.
Well, that's so sad.
Yeah, AUB has had their rebaptisms, their Reformation. They all have their Reformation. There's kind of a Reformation going on in the FLDS. AUB has had it when they kicked Joe Thompson out for allegedly molesting his daughters. They made all of the people take loyalty tests. Who are they loyal to, Owen Allred or Joe Thompson? It just continual crises. And that's how they keep the people going.
Because they kicked him out in the meeting and never told the people about it and kept him in a high position in privacy. They kicked him out in the meeting because the meetings were on the web and they didn't want people to come back on them if he got caught. It's recorded on their AUB website, but his own wife, which was my sister, one of his wives, never knew he ever got kicked out
They had a priesthood court, and I talked to some of the Thompsons that attended the priesthood court, and they didn't really come to a decision, and they dismissed it and said that they would, all of the facts that they had gathered, they would let Joe's family know and all of his sons that were defending him, but they never did do it. And they said they didn't want to reveal the facts because they didn't want to bring the embarrassment upon the victims, which is, just, they make up their own rules as they go along. But, there's a lot behind that Joe Thompson story that is tantalizing, because Joe found out that they had stolen that $1.5 million, and the brains behind the theft and the laundering of the money into AUB was a man named John Putfin. And John Putfin had taken one of Joe Thompson's daughters as a plural wife, and he just treated her horribly, the way he treated her. They had a child, a little girl, and she ran off and left him. And John Putfin had all of Virginia's money at that time, and he is using private detectives, helicopters and stuff, trying to find that plural wife so that he could take custody of the daughter. And I don't know how far too deep to get into it, but Joe Thompson contacted Virginia to get information directly from her at the time that Virginia was looking for Putfin. Joe knew right where to find Putfin, but he had never revealed it to Virginia. And that was always a problem. But Joe died before I could find out the answer. So all I could do was just kind of speculate. But I suspect that one reason why Joe was kicked off the council is because he tried to cut himself in on that $1.54 million.
Wow. Wow.
That's just speculation. I have no proof of that. But trying to put everything together, because there's still some missing gaps. And I tried to talk. Putfin is dead now. He did give me some information. A few of the other defendants that have since apostated have given me information and trying to piece everything together. But there was something that was going on there that was just not right with Joe Thompson and that money.
Well, I think that it was all the money, because as far as the child molest is concerned, they had 3 men that were accused of child molest at the same time, and the only one they ever did anything about is when the public found out about it. And members of Joe's family, including my sister, have confirmed to me that he was indeed molesting the children. But I don't think that that's in polygamy. I mean, it's to merit that they want to bring in anything to stop that, because they don't want to get their name in the mud. They don't want to deal with it. For example, when Tom Green took Linda Coons, his youngest wife, that he took at 12, at 13, you say you have the evidence at 12. She was my niece. And when I asked my brother why he didn't intervene and save his daughter, he said, "I can't. You don't understand. I can't. If I do anything, it will get other polygamists in trouble." That's my half-brother, John, her father. So that was the same position that was taken where Joe and the others were concerned.
Yeah, see, of the 3 councilmen that were kicked out of AUB, it was George Maycock, Joe Thompson, and Chevreau Palacio.
Yes.
A Mexican. Chevreau Palacio went to prison. And, I've investigated every kind of a sex crime you can possibly imagine. But what Palacio was having his wives and grandchildren do is among the most disgusting. And according to informants inside AUB, the wife had complained to Lemoyne Jensen about Chevreau's molestation, the things that were going on. And of course, like you said, they try to handle it within themselves without becoming public. And what happened is one of the victims talked to a school counselor. The counselor called in the police, and then it became public. And of course, Lemoyne Jensen acted as if, oh my gosh, this is news to me. But it's very seldom news. pedophile. I remember talking to people in AUB. They were always talking about so-and-so's a pedophile, so-and-so's been molesting his daughters, and different things. When they kicked George Maycock out, I'd long gone from the group then, and I'd heard about it, and he was allegedly molesting his children, and there was rumors of that going on while I was a part of the AUB. So I saw him in a grocery store, and I said, George, I understand they kicked you out. And he says, yeah. And he says, and everything you heard about it is true. And he walked off. So in other words, he confirmed that the rumors that he was molesting his daughters were true.
Well, a lot of the men have justified their behavior because the women and the children belong to them.
That's right. They're property.
They're not people. They're property. Therefore, they're justified to do what they want to with their property.
Right.
Sad, sad state of affairs.
I think it was in Murder of a Prophet. I wanted the reader to know how a pedophile thinks and acts. And what I did was use some of the rumors that I had heard about George Maycock as a model. Anyway, I think it was in that book that I did.
That's a remarkable book. They're all remarkable books, but that was very good when you got the psychological profile.
And I remember somebody, after they read it, they said, "You're writing pornography," and I said, "No, that's not pornography. Those are the actual things that happen in real life, and this is the way the pedophiles think. If you want to call it pornography, that's all right. But pornography is directed to try and incite you, to stimulate you sexually. So if this guy read it and felt it was pornographic, he must have been stimulated by this pedophilic act. That's all I can say.
Or not understood exactly what pornography was.
Right. Right.
Well, the sad thing is that people don't understand that, of course, there's abuse and domestic violence among all people to some degree, but the greater ratio is among arrangements where the people have no rights. In other words, if there's no equality in the marriage or the system or the job, the distance between the person empowered and the one disempowered, the greater the distance, the greater the abuse. And that's a statistical fact.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And that the Mormon fundamentalism, those organized groups are tailor-made for pedophiles and sex perverts to get into. And I think that is primarily the draw. I talked with Tom Green and Dennis Matthews were friends before they became involved in the groups. Dennis Matthews was the key person in the theft of the $1.5 million. And Tom told me, he said that Dennis decided that he would go into the Allred group because there was the largest pool of unmarried women. In other words, he had the better chance of getting plural wives there. And then Tom chose another little tiny group that he became involved with. You can't tell me that sex doesn't play a major role in why men get into polygamy.
John, you can go one step further. Today in our culture, watching television, what we spoon feed our kids, women are presented as sex toys or sex objects. In other words, the lack of respect is being culturally induced through our selling of sex, basically in commercials.
Yes, that Y chromosome was powerful, and if you know how to use it, you can make a lot of bucks.
Yes.
Pornographers are making a lot of dollars because of the Y chromosome.
That's right.
And maybe later on we'll get into Mohammed and his Y chromosome.
Which must have been enormous.
I got a stack of books that I've been reading from different women who have apostatized from Islam, and are telling us what they went through. Like the female
mutilation,
genital mutilation, and different things, and why they are required to wear the burqa and the headscarf and all of those cloaks that cover their body. And it's basically is because Muhammad was turned on by the sight of the female body. And so he covered it up. He was covering up the very thing that turned him on.
That the FLDS are doing the same thing in a lot of the groups.
That's
in the
true.
most basic fundamental, they're covering those women up so completely. They can't wear any makeup. They can't do anything with their hair except pull it strictly back. They're covered from the wrists. You see nothing but their hands and their head. You know, they're completely covered.
That's right.
And the same thing when you talk about we talked about blood atonement among the FLDS groups. And then, of course, the Muslims have their honor killing, the polygamy, but not all of them, because there's 5% or less of the people that cause all the trouble. Then anybody else that carries that same club name, Mormonism, Islam, gets treated like they're guilty. And it isn't that way. The person that commits the act is responsible. They are responsible, not a group. It's like saying that Christianity is responsible for the Christian Crusades. It was then, it's not now. You know, you step into the current reality and see who's responsible for what they're doing now.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's an interesting subject, determinism as opposed to free will. And there's no question that if you can take a child and indoctrinate him, you can pretty well predict his behavior as an adult. It depends upon the environment. But it goes to show that even though some people like yourself and others, Carolyn Jessup, for example, who have raised in the FLDS, are able to change and see see it for what it really is once they get out. But there's a good reason why Islam doesn't allow any other religion in their territory, like in Iran and Egypt is going to be the same way, and Pakistan and Afghanistan, is because they want to control information, because they want everybody to be a Muslim, and they want every Muslim to be a robot, just like the Mormon fundamentalists want to control information so that all of their offspring and members are robots, to do what the priesthood or the imam or whatever says. It's very interesting.
You were right when you said the person that controls information controls the people. You were absolutely correct.
Right.
John, I want to thank you for your delightful interview. I want to thank you for being with us today, and you are a remarkable person. Thank you so much for all you have to offer.
Well, you're welcome.